This week from the broker's desk here at the Mount Stephen Hotel in Montreal, Jennifer Maccarone, MNA, National Assembly with the Liberal Party. She is the official opposition critique for public security and families. We had a wonderful discussion on many topics, too many to name here. Stay tuned and watch this episode. Once again, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Mindblow and the Mount Stephen Hotel, Bar George.
I remember that. You know, I was the reluctant candidate. I didn't say, oh yeah, I really want to run to be president of the school board. It wasn't my primary orientation, because so many people knocked at my door and said, do you want to do it? Can you do it? Can you do it? And I said, okay, I was kind of good doing what I was doing. But, you know, it was never because somebody wasn't doing it right. It was more because it felt like it was time to have a change and have a parent come back on board and talk about the actual reality that we were experiencing and goals for people in situations of vulnerability, like my kids. And so, of course, I had maybe a different vision.
Definitely a different vision, different energy. And, but it was just interesting. I remember that the perception and the person were two different things.
Oh, I loved it. You know, I love school board. I miss school board. It's that, again, that connectivity with your community, with your people, a shared reality and shared experience, which was really nice. And, you know, I drank the Kool-Aid. I infinitely believe in public education and in everything that all of my teachers and my principals and my community did for me and my kids. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for all that support that I had at the time. And so I consistently want to give back.
It's a good springboard for other levels of politics. Was it done with that intent?
Nope.
No, not at all.
No, I never in a million years thought that I would be an M&A. It was not part of my career plan. I worked for myself, right?
Yes.
I was working in marketing and communications.
Yes, right. For about, 20 years?
Well, no, not for myself. I worked for a long time in the pulp and paper industry. And then, I had kids with needs, and I wasn't fitting into a profile where I could work in that type of corporate environment. And so I left and I went and worked for a niche advertising agency. And again, that also became extremely difficult with the needs of my kids getting increasingly difficult. I had to find another model that worked for me. So I became the reluctant entrepreneur. There was more people calling me and saying, can you do this? Can you do that? I was like, okay, yeah, I guess I can do that. Yeah, I suppose I can help you with that. And it just blossomed. And then when the school board stuff happened, it was born from not wanting to cut the cords when my kids started school with all of the investments that we had done to get them to where they needed to be. They were nonverbal. They had a lot of physical issues. They had a lot of emotional issues, behavioral issues. And so I couldn't just say, sure, take my kids now. I wasn't prepared to just let it all go. So I'm going to get involved. I'm going to join the governing board. I'm going to join the parents committee. And then it just grew into president of the school board, president of all of the school boards in the province of Quebec. And that's when the Liberals came knocking on my door, because I was their critic. So for 3 years, they knocked on my door, and for 3 years, I said no.
I think that's the best way for any politician who wants to make an impact with their heart and with, reason to start. I mean, if you look at anybody who has a successful career, I don't think there's a more beautiful path than somebody who's invested for reasons I think that are authentic, as opposed to for ego or for status or for money. At a certain point, a single mother, taking care of 2 children with special needs, huge responsibility, and yet you're giving back. So what fuels this? Because it's not for the glamour. It's not. I don't think so. It's not for the.
Oh no, it's not for the glamour.
No.
It's not for the glamour. It's not for the money. And definitely not for that. It's not for the time that I don't have with my kids anymore.
Seriously.
It's, I think public service is a calling. My father was a sergeant detective of homicide for the MUC. My mom was a nurse at the Royal Vic. That's how they met.
Voila.
So public service sort of ran in my blood. And when I was a kid, my parents volunteered. They were at school. They were at the arena when I was skating and playing my sports. They were always there. So it just felt natural to follow suit and do a similar path. And that need to represent people and help people, especially those in situations of vulnerability. And it fills my heart. And when my heart is filled, well, I'm really happy, and I just want to continue doing what I'm doing. And so I feel very lucky that I found myself in this situation. I loved what I was doing before, and it's extremely difficult, but what motivates me is knowing that There's people that are grateful that there's somebody that's there who listens to them and brings their voice forward. When you're a spokesperson, it's not my voice that counts, right? I'm an elected official. It's the voice of my citizens. I don't have to agree with you
No.
to know that I have to bring your voice forward, and I take that very seriously.
It's still part of your responsibility to formulate your opinion based on, these interactions. But at the end of the day, it's what, holds true to you. Do you find yourself conflicted sometimes between what maybe your citizens require or what they tell you and then what you feel and having to?
Sure. There's lots of challenging discussions that we have in the National Assembly, and medical assistance in dying, I think, would be an excellent example of that. Quebec being a precursor for the rest of
the rest,
Canada.
yes.
We really pushed the envelope. So I got to sit in all of that debate in the last legislature, and then again in this legislature. Now we're talking about anticipated requests. So we found ourselves again in a situation where we're not married legally to what's happening at a federal level. A lot of our citizens here in Westmount, St. Louis, were not
We're not
favorable to
favorable
that
to this, no.
because, and rightfully so, their arguments being that many people who find themselves at a certain age requiring certain support and in a CHSLD, post what we saw in COVID, I don't want to go and live there. I would rather have access to MAiD.
Yes.
And so the problem is not having an extended access to that kind of medical service. It's more that we need to improve the services that are available to people. And if we can do that, then maybe we don't need MAiD. Maybe we don't need anticipated requests.
Just for those who don't know, MAiD would be the acronym for
Medical assistance in dying.
Okay.
So there was a conflicted conversation, and we did a lot of consultation here in the riding so that we could get a flavor for what people wanted.
Do you feel that certain more conservative areas would, have more of a penchant because of religious beliefs that prevent this sort of
Some of it
decision?
religious,
Yes.
some of it religious, some of it having a lot to do again with that access to good health care and professional services. Some of it was people that maybe don't understand the need for some of it the belief of we need to protect life at all costs, and that's not necessarily a religious belief. And then there's the whole other flip side. Many people who are going to be requesting anticipated documents for medical assistance in dying, les soins de fin de vie, often have early onset Alzheimer's. And so the only way that you can advocate and say, I want to pursue this as
Is before the Alzheimer's
while you're
kicks in,
still
sure.
apt. And so the goal was to try to help individuals like that have equal access to healthcare services. It is a healthcare service for people that are suffering. But it does, I think it's a good social conversation,
Definitely.
sociological conversation. We have in Canada, Quebec is one of the highest rates of requests and follow through of MAiD. So it's something that we need to investigate. And that's what the commission is actually doing now.
Are you called to express your personal opinion on this quite often? Is that something you're...
It's one of those rare opportunities in the House where you have a free vote. So
Okay.
you're not voting with your party. You're
Interesting.
voting either to represent the interests of your riding or your own personal
belief.
positions. I voted in favor of because I do believe in self-actualized care and decisions, and I believe in the autonomy of our citizens to choose. So while it might not be right for you, for many other people, it's right for them. And I don't think that I was elected to
Take
tell
away
you
that
how
right.
you're
Sure.
going to choose how you want to end your life if that's where you're at because you're suffering. And I look at kids like mine who have special needs, who will never be 100% independent and will always require some accompaniment. What if they find themselves in an end-of-life situation with cancer and they're suffering? Why would I not want to respect their autonomy, their decisions for how they would like to act? And so I think that we have a responsibility to that, but I have a deep respect for the people that aren't there yet or will never get there. And that's democracy. And that's a wonderful thing. And I think that we never want to lose sight of that.
I guess there's arguments on the other side that this becomes as an easy way out, not easy is maybe not the right term, but a way out before looking at other options. And
It's not easy to get access to MAiD. People
Okay.
might think that there's a whole process that you have to go through with professionals that will approve your request.
assess.
And then there's a second and a third opinion, and there's a whole medical team that will go through.
Sure.
So a lot of people are thinking, yeah, I can just go and do it. It doesn't
no,
work
it
like
doesn't
that.
work like that. Not yet. And I think maybe that's the fear where it becomes easier and becomes sort of like a solution for
I don't know
getting rid
that
of your
we'll ever
parents
get
sort of
there.
thing, you know?
You know
Yeah.
what? From a medical
Yeah.
professional perspective, they are held to a very
Very high.
specific
Sure.
code of conduct. And in the event somebody felt that a family member you pursued with the implementation of MAiD for a loved one, and I don't believe that you acted ethically, that's a very big deal.
Mhm.
And so I don't think anybody takes it lightly. I don't think or predict that it'll ever be easy, but it can never be linked to the fact that I didn't have access to proper services. And so
Understood.
that's the
Sure.
big
That's the
concern
big
that we
concern.
have.
I have, unfortunately, one of my very, very close friends that went through that process with his wife.
Mm.
And it was a cancer that was inoperable. And, you know, at the beginning of the process, I believe she was taking like something like 2 morphine pills a day. At the end, she was taking 14.
Wow.
And she was able to, you know, be with her family the day before, show her husband how to prepare those cookies that the grandkids loved, do a video. And on the day of, they asked her again, or like, do you want to go through with this?
Yep.
So not an easy process, but I believe, yeah, for some, it is a choice made in dignity.
Mhm.
But it's a hard position to advocate for. And
Absolutely.
I guess that's part of your job, huh? Part of the
It wasn't a
challenge of what you do.
unanimous vote in the House.
No, I
So
could
just to
imagine.
give you an
Sure.
idea of how
Sure.
some people had a lot of concerns about it, and rightfully so.
Mm. What are some of the things that you're most proud of in the last 7 years, 7, 8 years that you've been?
Yes, I'm 7 years. I'm going to be starting, I guess, my 8th year in September, October. I would say a lot of the things that I'm mostly proud of are the fact that we've really built positive relationships with our citizens here in the riding. I've deposited legislation that is very important to me, like putting an end to conversion therapy. That was the first bill that I ever deposited. I've advocated significantly for people living with handicaps, whether it's youth or adults. We've never spoken as much about. I was the first person in Canada to have autism advocate in her title. Nobody's ever had that before in my title in the House. So those are things that are important to me. We've also never spoken as much about public security or the situation of correctional agents, for example, who it's a very difficult job. So bringing visibility to causes, I think, that are maybe a little less known or a little less trendy.
Trendy, sure.
It's something I'm
Just
proud of.
for those who are following, you're basically the head of the opposition for security, right? For public
For
security.
public security, for the family dossier, which is daycares, access to subsidies for people living with handicaps, public curator, also a very important reform that I sat in, and I'm very proud of that as well.
What are
Also
some of the
LGBT,
challenges now, though, in public security that you feel, you know, some that you've made some tremendous headway, others that seem to be at a standstill? What's the most frustrating for you?
It's frustrating being in the opposition in general, regardless of the definition or the dossier that you carry, right? I'm in my 7th year, as we've said. And so after 4 years, being in the opposition is an excellent school. And so the first 4 years was terrific. I learned everything because I got there and I was, well, what do I have to do? I have to go do 20 minutes and talk about what?
Yes.
As you know, as an opposition member, my sword is time. And you learn how to use that appropriately because
Effectively, sure.
the government controls the legislative agenda, the calendar, when we're going to debate, what we're going to debate. There's not a 2/3 majority in the House. They have 75% of the seats. So there's no real democracy. Can't stop them from doing anything. But I can certainly slow down legislation. And so learning how to do that was really important. But I've done a whole turn of the sun. So now that I'm in my 2nd term being in the opposition, it's frustrating because I bring forth ideas that I know personally are important because I'm living it,
Sure.
or because I know many citizens are living it and being told no for political reasons. I find that to be extremely challenging. And I mentioned to you earlier that I'm that M&A that I take everything personal. Everything is very emotional for me. And so, you know, I cry, I get angry. I'm very happy.
Yeah.
You'll know, you see it in my face. So I find that really hard. In public
Wow.
security, there's lots going on.
A real human in
a
politics.
human politician.
That's
oh my
crazy.
gosh.
Revolutionary. That's fantastic. We need more of that. And I think, and for what it's worth, you know, we talked about more of a populist vote. There is an emotional factor that have people decide what they decide. And so showing this human side of you is not a bad thing. Probably a reason why you've been reelected, you know, in your writing. And
I hope so.
Yeah, I
I
think so.
hope so. About
Yeah.
being true to who you are.
Well,
But
sure.
again, I think it's also part of that mental health aspect. It's hard being in politics. It's hard being in the opposition.
Sure.
It's probably very hard to be in government. I don't have that comparison, and I have a lot of respect for the people that are making those
Yeah.
decisions. I can imagine it's not easy, even though I don't agree with them. But I can imagine it's not easy. But it's a much harder job than I thought it was going to be. So I think allowing yourself to be human and feel is very important, and not putting on airs, not pretending that everything is okay. You know what? It's not okay. You voted against a mandate initiative where I want to study the transition from youth to adult for people living with a handicap or autism. I know it doesn't work. I'm living it. And as an MNA, if I'm feeling lost and I didn't know I was going to lose my doctor, I didn't know I was going to lose access to all the prescriptions, I didn't know I was going to lose my subsidies from the government. Can you imagine everybody else? Or the fact that children living with handicaps don't have equitable access to daycare spots. That's also not right. So when somebody votes against that, and it's a personal cause for me,
Of course.
man, it hurts.
But it begs the question: why would anybody ever vote against anything that's so common sense? Political reasons.
Political reasons, don't want to give visibility to somebody in the opposition so that they can go out
And
on the place
say,
publique and say, look what I did, vote for the Liberal Party of Quebec
But that's-
because we're advocating for the right things and for you. So they don't want to give you that chance. They could pick it up though. Like I mentioned that I deposited
up,
that
reframe it,
and
sure.
deposit it like their own. They don't. They did that with my first bill, which was to abolish conversion therapy for people from the LGBT community.
So the human side of you would still see that as part of a victory, no?
I
Somewhat.
think that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, and I repeat that to myself every
Sure.
time they take my ideas and reformulate them and present them as their own.
Absolutely.
Because it shouldn't be about having my name; it should be about the end goal. But I'm a human being. Some of it feels like I would have liked to have
The credit for the work.
recognition
Sure, the
for the
recognition.
work that I've done.
Okay, well,
But
that's
I'm-
honest. Again, so once again, you've
But I'm
proved
happy at the end
Yeah.
of the day that at least we move forward and
some
we can
things.
talk about that. Maybe I influenced part of that, and that that's my job. My job as a critic is to push them forward, to hold their feet to the fire, and make sure
Sure.
that they're doing what they said they were going to do.
Yeah. Do you see yourself in this, I would say, arena for an extended period of time? Like, you see an end to it? Is there an end game for?
I definitely want to do another term.
Okay.
So the elections are in 2026. I definitely want to run again. I still love what I'm doing. I still feel very passionate about it. There are times
shows.
where I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I need a break, but I don't lose my desire to want to represent the citizens of what is, I think, the best and most important riding of the 125 ridings. I know that I'm biased, but I do think that we have the best riding. So I want to continue. And then you know what, we'll see. 4 years is a long time. It's a big commitment. And so we'll go 4 years at a time, and we'll see from there.
Having faced the challenges that you've faced personally and politically, it's interesting because the last time we saw each other was 2018. And at least in my eyes, you haven't changed.
Wow.
So, no, and that's a compliment. My question then is, have you seen some of your colleagues maybe affected by the reality of politics, become disillusioned, disenchanted, jaded even, or bitter? Is that the reality, or do people?
I think that what we've recognized is that it's exceptionally difficult for younger politicians with young families to make it into the House. And it's important that we carve a space for them, access to childcare services, for example, or more flexible schedules if we could make that happen. Marois Risky and Greg Kelly are an excellent example of that. Both Liberal MNAs became a couple, got married, have children, but they're both MNAs. And,
So
Marois, who has a huge future ahead of her in politics, if that's what she chooses to do, has elected to not return in the next mandate because it's just too hard.
Hard on the family.
So it's
sure.
not disillusioned, I think, from the work that you do. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that it's extremely
The
taxing
toll it
on your
takes.
personal life.
Sure.
And how can you marry all of that? I couldn't have done it when I mentioned, they knocked on my door for 3 years. I couldn't have done it when my kids were in their early teens. There was no
Sure.
way I could be away 3-4 days a week because I'm not at home. Something happens at home, I'm far
You're
away.
far,
I'm
no,
a
exactly.
3-hour drive away. So you have to find a way to marry that. I think that's probably the biggest challenge. And the National Assembly of Quebec with 125 seated members should be a reflection of society. So we need to make space for people that are 65 and over, for people that are doctors, lawyers, hairdressers, taxi drivers, community service organizers, youth members. It should be that, because it just enhances the quality of your debate in a commission, because you get all the different points of view. It's nice to have life experience. It changes how I debate, because I can speak from what I have lived personally. But it's also good to hear from everybody else's place around the table. Oh, yeah, but you know what? In my experience, or what I've seen is completely different from yours, Jennifer. That's great, because it influences how I think, how I vote, and how it will influence things when I'm working on legislation.
Just, I guess, to challenge that idea, isn't that the whole purpose of you being there as a representative of everybody in the community? Is that if you put everybody in that room, then nothing would get done.
Right. Absolutely. You want to have exactly that, but you also want to have constructive debate. If
Sure.
there's no debate,
Well,
then it's never
do you
going to
feel
work.
that there's a lack of constructive debate by lack of representation from different segments of the population, such as younger or older people?
I think that we're lacking
At the
in
House?
youth. Yeah. I
Yes.
think that we're lacking in youth. I think that we're lacking in representation from public service. I think that we need more of that, because we talk a lot about public service, healthcare, education,
Sure.
daycare services, for example. That's the top 3 budgets in the House is that. I think we would be better served if we had, for example, a préposé aux bénéficiaires. Why don't we have that person around the table? We should have more nurses. We do have one. It's maybe not enough. We have 1 doctor. We used to have 2. We have an infinite amount of lawyers, and that's also very important, because we're talking about legislation. But
Sure.
when Francine Charbonneau, who was an M&A in
yeah.
Laval, when she was there, she was a former hairdresser.
Yes.
We don't have that
Okay,
anymore.
so that brings me to another point we talked earlier. You said the imposter syndrome. The House is composed of people who are in politics, but not necessarily experienced in politics when they get there, or for that matter, experienced in what they have to govern. The Minister of Education is not necessarily a teacher before, and so
Rarely even.
Rarely. First of all, how do you overcome that? Do you feel that there is maybe a better way in which certain positions would be held with people of that experience or that background, as opposed to the way that our system is made?
It's a good question. And there's many questions in your questions. I would say for imposter syndrome, I still have imposter syndrome. It's harder for women in politics. We're not judged with the same yardstick as men. We're not there yet. People, when I walk into the House, and when I was a new M&A even, people ask me questions like, what's going to happen with your children?
Okay.
You don't ask those
I wasn't
questions
sure.
of
I wasn't
men.
sure where you were going, but okay. So
People
just
don't ask
understand.
those questions of men. If a woman is more direct or a fierce debater, well, then you're not seen as that same perception in a man, right? You're seen as
yes.
It's a negative perception of women when we advocate ferociously. And that's something I think that also needs to change. I can be extremely passionate about things, but if I appear angry, it's not the same thing like a man appearing angry. And there's a difference when you're debating a woman or when you're debating a man. When you are a woman, it's not the same thing. I often say, add women, change politics. We tend to be more conciliatory. We tend to want to find more bridges. We want to solve the problem as equitably as possible. Not quite the same thing when it's a male-dominated industry. We're not at parity yet in the House. We're getting there. We're a lot closer. We're at 42%, which is great. But you still have that feeling. You're judged for what you wear. You're judged for your hair. You're judged if you're wearing makeup, not wearing makeup. Oh, you look tired today. Your hair doesn't look good today. Your clothes, what are you wearing today? Why
Which
are
you
you
feel
wearing
has
this?
little to do with public service.
Right. But you're judged by all of that. Are you single? Are you married? These are all questions that we don't ask of men in political
Okay, so you're saying
situations.
because I was saying in a lot of businesses, these are common themes. I mean, you're judged by what you look, what you drive, what your life is, and so on and so forth. But you're saying as a woman in politics, it comes with that extra set of
Because your life is very public.
explanations that you need to justify, for lack of a better term.
And your life is very, very,
Scrutinized.
very, very public. Everything I do in the House is recorded, is filmed, is written.
As opposed to a man who would not be recorded?
No, it's the same. It's just my point is that there's nowhere to hide. So when you feel like I am not worthy of, or I'm not as good as, I maybe don't belong here, you don't get to hide.
You don't get to hide that.
Everything you do is judged, and it's judged harshly,
Sure.
not always judged with a
Yeah,
positive
positive
perspective.
mentoring sort of. Yeah, okay.
So
I understand.
it's tough.
That feeling of being an imposter comes from having to learn a role, having to learn certain mechanism. It also forces you to have to learn, which ultimately makes you better.
Right.
So it's part of the process.
Absolutely.
So would you say that for anybody who's whether in business or in politics, how do you deal with that feeling of imposter syndrome to turn it into a positive?
I work very hard. I sweat every single speech.
Yeah.
I sweat every single interview. I sweat every single intervention that I have to do in the house. Doesn't matter what it is. I ask a question. And I tell myself I shouldn't be nervous anymore. I shouldn't be worried anymore. But I
you
am
are.
because
Of course.
I want to do a good job. I don't want to let anybody down. I don't want to make any mistakes.
Sad to say, but I feel that it's a feeling that needs to a certain extent persist because it always forces you to question, am I doing the right thing? Am I, I don't think, at least of what I'm understanding, you're not describing an imposter syndrome as if you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing for lack of
No.
good intention or integrity. It's,
No.
am I the right person for the job?
Right. Well,
Which,
you know what? You look at a lot of lawyers that are there, and I don't have that legislative experience. So when I'm debating a lawyer in the House, you do feel inadequate. How am I going to, like, I often sit across from Simon-Jean Barrette, for example. And yes, he's a formidable debater. He's a lawyer. He's the Minister of Justice. I've got my role that I play as critic, and I do my best, and I ask a lot of questions. But you know what? He can do a good job of making you feel inadequate because, well, you should know this. I'm a lawyer.
I'm
I
a
know
lawyer.
all these
Yeah,
things,
exactly.
right? But I remind myself that the questions that I'm asking are probably the questions of many, many people in the population who don't know otherwise and feel the same way as I do. I need you to explain it to me because this piece of legislation is going to have a dramatic impact on many Quebecers. I want to know. So, but you have that, that little.
Okay, so then I guess that falls into my layered question. Do you feel, or would it be something to contemplate that these roles be served by people who have that background, who have that?
No, I think that
No?
I think anybody can be a politician, and anybody should think that they can and should find their place in the National Assembly again. Because I come back to, I feel that the power that legislation has in the National Assembly, it should be a real reflection of society. And not everybody's a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer, so we need to have that balance around the table.
Sure, but there are topics that are maybe better understood by a doctor if we're talking about.
And that's why you have your sous-ministre, like your PDG, right? You've got your conseil d'administration, and then you're going to have your president and all the people underneath that have that level of expertise. You have that. That's
you
what
have
your
the
ministry
support of the
is.
council, sure.
Yeah. So you have people with all of that level of experience that are getting you where you need to be and training you and supporting you and giving you all the information. And then it's your job to represent the interests of your party, the positions of your party, the positions of your citizens. Learn, do better every day. I tell myself, do better, do better, do better, study, 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 do better, do better, do better. Make sure that you're reading as much as you possibly can. If I don't know something about a topic, I didn't know anything about public security before I got the dossier. I didn't really know anything about daycare other than I was a user of the services.
Exactly, sure. And everybody enjoys a little public security.
Voila. So, you learn as you go, but
as
you
you
immerse
go.
yourself and you spend time with experts so that the experts can make you better.
If you had a message to encourage or to inspire younger women to go into politics, what would it be? How would you verbalize the importance of having to take an active role in government?
You have a role here. You have a place here. In fact, it's essential that you make your place here. Never think that you are inadequate. Know that there's going to be other women who are going to be there to lift you up. And so we're forging a way for you. So do understand that when you add women, you change politics. And so we need to make sure that we convey that message. And it's okay to be human. It shouldn't be seen as a weakness that you show emotion, in my opinion. And I say that obviously it's self-serving because I've said earlier that I'm extremely emotional.
Exactly, sure.
But I do feel that maybe it's something that's more identified with as a female characteristic, but I don't think that you should see that as a weakness. And I don't think the fact that maybe you've carved out a place for yourself as a domestic engineer or a homemaker or having cared for children as I don't have my space. It's the reverse. You are a user of the public system. You have something to say. You should make your way. So there's no such thing as a position that makes you less worthy, a salary that makes you less worthy, a gender that makes you less worthy.
Sure.
you have a role here and we want you to come. So there's many of us that are advocating for that.
Have you seen support amongst female colleagues from the other side because of?
That's a really interesting question. Yes, you know what? I would say that in my experience working, for example, with Sonia Labelle, who is the president of Conseil Trésor, she's a formidable woman, and I have debated her. We've done private member bills together, my bill, but her ministry.
Okay.
And so we've worked a lot of conversation about that, and it was very enriching to be in commission with her. We couldn't talk about everything beforehand and plan, but when we were in commission, I could see how our conversations were very constructive. And then after the fact, it was a lot of, that was really good. Maybe we should do more things like that together. So I do think that there's that if you can bring it. Not everybody does that.
But maybe more so than what a man to another would try to support him just because.
Between men, I don't know. I don't have the experience, but you know what? I've had positive experiences with many ministers. I think that I work hard to develop those relationships. I know my place. I know I'm in the opposition, and I know that means that if I want to accomplish things for my dossiers or my riding, I'm going to have to build those bridges and those relationships. Lionel Carman, for example, he's a really good person. And so I will often cross the floor to talk to him because I need advice, because I would like for him to come to the riding and speak to my citizens, for example. You get a lot of that. It's not a female-male thing. I would do the same thing if my vis-a-vis was a woman. I would do the same thing. So, and I have with Suzanne Roy, for example, she's the Minister of Families. There's a daycare in NDG called the Little Red Playhouse, and it was about to close. And so I advocated for them individually with her. Went to see her many times. We're going to have to save them because they service handicapped children, and you can't have them close. So what are we going to do to save them? And you know what? We worked extremely well together.
So then let me ask you a question that's a bit, I guess, damned if you do, damned if you don't. But all these wonderful moments of, bilateral sort of movements and helping each other out and things where you cross the floor literally and, metaphorically, they're not often put forward in the media. These are not the most salient stories. They're not, what sells, and they don't make, how can I say, good politics, because it makes maybe the opposition look good, or it makes, or vice versa. Do you feel that for the greater good, these stories should be put forward more often?
Absolutely.
So how can we do that?
I do. You know what? I do talk about it. I can't force the media to make that a news story, but there's a lot of things that we've done that have been transpartisan. We talked about medical assistance in dying. It would be one of those dossiers where we worked in a transpartisan fashion. We have a lot of special commissions. You've seen a lot about screen time for kids.
Yes.
That's a transpartisan commission. So how do we work together?
We can talk about that also.
We can. So you know what? So there's those kinds of things. But for example, we just finished budget credits. So after the government deposits their budget, all of the commissions, which are mini salon bleu, turn into it's not the bills that are debated, it's the ministers that have to testify. So it's Christmas for the opposition parties.
Absolutely.
It's very exciting for us.
Day, sure.
But I do, when kudos are due, I did that with Suzanne in the mic. I thanked her personally for her intervention to save the Little Red Playhouse, for example. I've done the same thing with François Bonnardel, who is the Minister of Public Security, when there was something good that they've done in terms of hiring more people, getting more cohorts graduated, and that's a great thing. That's what we need. It's one of the first steps in the right direction to do better, to reduce the level of violence, to have more representativity, things like that. I think you need to highlight it when it's good and mention that. Bernard Drainville, I have a Centennial Academy here in the riding, which is threatened with closure if the minister doesn't intervene. He was very generous with his time and accepted a meeting with the community that I had brought to the National Assembly post-question period, where I asked a very public question and asked if he would meet them, and he said yes. I think those are the kinds of things that we need to highlight. But I can't make the media do it.
No, for
Just
sure.
But the reverse is true too. When I've got a good mandate initiative or a good bill, it would
you'd
be
like
nice
to get a
say,
little spotlight too. I think the golden opportunity here is that we don't have to rely on mainstream media. I think in this day and age, if you want to get a message across platforms like these and like so many others, give us that opportunity that maybe wasn't as prevalent 10, 15 years ago. So I think we have that working for us. public security, what's one of your main concerns that maybe you can share, and something that, you'd like to see a change, or that you're concerned that we're not heading in the right direction?
The increase in violence is deeply concerning to me. We've looked at the statistics, and since 2018, it's 130% increase in many districts. It's concerning.
Tied into mental health.
Tied into mental health, tied into access to arms, access to, I would say more, it's disorganized crime now versus what it was maybe back in the day where we talked about organized crime.
That's
it's
interesting.
more disorganized crime, and that's what's described to me by people like Fadi Daguerre, who is the chief of police here for Montreal, for example, or Madame Beausoleil, who is
making it harder to track, in a sense, and
harder to manage
and
harder to control, harder to investigate, to put an end to it. Our justice system is also significantly saturated. So whether the SQ or the police move forward with arrests and you want to pursue it from a legal perspective with the DPCP, for example, it's hard to do because the justice system is saturated. And so while I might be stopping a ton of people for drunk driving, for example, I might not actually be able to prosecute them because there's no time in front of a judge to do that. And then there's the arrêt Jordan, which will come into effect. So there's a certain amount of time that you have to prosecute. And if you don't do it within that period of time, people are left off the hook. And that's happening with conjugal violence, many things in that respect that I think need to be changed. So we need to improve our justice system, and we also need to have, I believe, more qualified police officers, SQ or municipal. We need to find a better way to fund that.
Qualify in what sense? In human interaction and human training, understanding?
Training. Part of the issues that we have right now is a lot of our police, regretfully, are either not qualified or requalified for the use of their arm, for the use of a taser, pepper spray. This all requires a training and then a requalification on an annual basis. And it's hard to do because we have a shortage of personnel. So to release these people to go get trained, where do you take these people? Who's going to pay for that?
How does that affect? Okay, so I thought you were going more like the police need to be retrained in their social skills sort of thing, more than their...
I think that's a personal thing. They have a lot of training, like for the fight against racism. There's things for that. There's things for sensitivity training for how to deal with people that have mental health issues. There's a lot of that's going on as well. But we need to find the time to get them there. And in order to do that, we need to have more personnel so that they can be released to go and do the training. And then the government needs to do better with their budgetary spend so that we can help our municipalities give those people the time to be away. Because if I'm releasing you to go and get training, who's replacing you?
Me? Sure. When already
there's a cost.
Overwhelmed. Yes.
There's a cost. I'm already paying for you to go and get that training.
So do we need more police force? Do we need more?
Yes, because right now what's happening is, even if, again, they've done a good job of increasing the number of people in their cohorts that are leaving Nicolette, whether they're going to go to the SQ or any one of the municipal police forces, there's a choice that happens there. There's so many police that are retiring, that are going on sick leave, that are regretfully victims of suicide. It's an extremely difficult job, and I don't think we realize the humanity behind it. It's why I wanted the dossier. My dad was a cop.
Yes.
And I saw a lot of things in him when I was growing up that I recognized just how tough that job was. And now that I work with the police today and I talk to them, I'm seeing all of the code, like I have a sore back. Sore back at the time was code for I'm not doing well mentally. I'm having I've seen things that are difficult.
It's weighing on them physically, but it's
right. And you're not allowed to be afraid, and you're not allowed to express weakness, and you're not allowed to express fear, right? You're supposed to be tough. But
are there, statistically, there must be more women in the police force now than there were 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
Has there been a correlation of a positive impact in the ability to express one's vulnerabilities because of that?
I don't know. I haven't seen any studies of that. Could be. It could be. But I think in general, when we're talking about les forces de l'ordre, police, it's very important for them to do that demonstration of strength. And so amongst their own peers, I don't think that it's well seen whether it's a woman or a man. I don't think that we have that divide. But there's a lot of stuff that needs to train. You mentioned that maybe that sensitivity training. We need to have more programs like IMIS, where you have your somebody who works in social services that's accompanying your police officer when they're going out on calls.
Calls that deal with
About
mental health. And
2 years ago now, we saw Maureen Bro, unfortunately, well, a year and a half now, Maureen Bro, who regretfully lost her life due to a call where they didn't have information or access to information about the person behind the door, who unfortunately was suffering from extreme stress and mental illness. They should have known. The police didn't have access to that information at the time. And so, she opened the door and that was it. We need to change also how we deal with those types of situations to ensure that the people that are protecting us, that we're doing our job to protect them.
This is fun. Like off the record and whatever, when we film, we try to take the whole, I guess, entirety of the content, let it flow. It's long format. We'll edit some little parts just to make it, but I think it's really interesting. And I think that it could be, I'd like to look at a situation where maybe it's a recurring thing.
Yeah, we can talk about, I do that a lot. I went to Belleuil this week. It's where I'm from, right? I'm from Belleuil, Saint-Hilaire, all that area. I went down there to speak to the women's groups because their M&A is Simon Jeanet Barrette.
Oh, non, pas lui. I don't know.
Ben, c'est ça. So he won't go and speak to them. They're Anglophones, they're seniors, things like that. So I go to make sure that they're informed, and we talk about what's happening right now.
Yeah.
Like the deficit. It's a huge thing that we need to worry about, that there's going to be elections that are coming. We need to talk about that we need to talk about what the transition in healthcare with Santé Québec, what's the impact on you? Your seniors, what is your vision and plan for the future? CHSLD, Maison des Aînés, how do you see that? Home healthcare, how would you like to live your life? How are we supposed to be investing those funds? Education, there's a lot of stuff happening. Laïcité. This is all stuff that we're debating now. And so it's important, I think, people know what's going on.
Especially leading up to the election. I mean, it's always important, but there's, I guess, pivotal moments where that type of debate is necessary. And it's, in this case, it's not debate, it's really just sharing information.
But we can definitely do it regularly.
Yeah.
This is what's going on. These are the questions this week or this month, and this is what we debated.
Sure.
And this is where we're at. This is what was adopted.
Absolutely. Okay, that's cool. That's definitely something that we'll discuss. We'll discuss, and it can be a segment. And maybe I could even have somebody from the opposite side and have a nice conversation.
Yeah.
Crossfire
I
sort
can
of thing.
probably get you a minister here if that's what you'd like.
Right on.
All right.
Okay. Boom. Hein? Ah ouais, Dubé, ouais, c'est ça.
Oh, je pense pas Dubé. Although Dubé, I should have mentioned him as one of the people that was very helpful. I have Westmount St. Louis is an extremely diverse and unique riding.
Yes.
Right? I mean, we have the wealthiest city in Canada. We have 50% of all the homelessness, but we have 5 universities. Nobody else has that. We have 2 cégeps. We have 3 hospitals. One of them is the Neuro, and the Neuro it's a world-class, internationally recognized institution for their research. They do a bench to bedside. So from research to the actual care that they're giving, nobody does what they do. They are pioneers. You don't want to go and get care there. The nurses are breaking their ankles and their legs when they go up the hill in the wintertime. It's so icy, and there's space at the MUHC site where the Glen site is. And so they need to move, but that means that they need to be part of the PQE. Christian Dubé, I have to give it to him. I went to credits last year and I asked him publicly if he would come with me for a visit. And he said, oh, yeah, we'll see. And I followed up and he came. He came for a visit. He walked the floor with me with the PDG, with the Lucio Patroni at the time. And so it went and worked very, very well. So I was very pleased that he gave us that attention.
And did something come of it?
I believe so, yes. They're going to be working in steps right now. It's going to be hard. Obviously, we have a gigantic, never before seen deficit right now. That being said, one of the things that they can do at the Neuro is transfer their services, by parcels. So we can start with research, for example, and segments of research, and then they might start moving the services that they offer. Although they're all really integrated, but they've got a lot of equipment, for example, that they were given through budget, and they have that equipment, but they have no room for it. There's no space where they can use it. So we need to.
How frustrating to see all these resources squandered. You were talking about
it's your money.
Well, yes, it is.
Yeah, it's our money.
We pay a lot of taxes,
yes.
But the Olympic Stadium was at $1.9 billion for the roof. You were saying
$1 billion.
Oh, sorry, just $1 billion for a roof.
A contract that was awarded not through tender.
Ah, Lord.
And it's an important project. I think we all talk about the Olympics. Nobody doesn't know what the Olympic Stadium is. Nobody's never talked about the route before.
But
we need to do something with it. But in the context of Hôpital Maisonneuve-Rosemont, which is falling apart.
Take $1 billion and spread it out over, the different ridings and then spread it out over the different hospitals and universities and schools.
Was that where we needed to invest?
Lord.
Today.
No.
Did it need to be $1 billion? I've got FACE in my riding, which is a school that is fantastic. Nobody's doing what they do. They marry the Anglophone and the Francophone sector, primary and secondary schools. They're in a heritage building right across the street from McGill, super accessible. They're an arts and culture school. So they are a 240 school, right? So there's no zone. The whole zone is the island of Montreal. So people apply to get in there. The government doesn't have the money to invest to bring that building back to where it needs to be. It's dangerous. So they're splitting the school and moving them out of the riding. I will officially have no more public schools in downtown Montreal. That's my only one, and it's not accessible to my residents. So again, why are we putting all that money there when
a citizen hears the government doesn't have the money? It doesn't compute. It doesn't make sense.
You're right, but that's because the spend has not been done in a fashion that makes sense to support public services. In my opinion, since the CAQ has been in power, one, they inherited a $7 billion surplus.
And now we're at a $14 billion deficit,
which is never before seen. We've lost our rating with Standard & Poor's, which means that our debt ratio is just going to continue to climb because our interest rate keeps going up. But they've made a lot of questionable decisions with our money and spend. And so unfortunately, that has a huge impact on our ability to proceed. So how come it's gone? Where's all this money gone in 2022? $7 billion in $500 and $600 checks that went out to all Quebecers. We call that an electoralist check. Please vote for me. I'm going to give you some money.
Sure.
But that's $7 billion. That was our debt last year. $710 million in a risk with Northvolt. Do we need to develop the economy? 100%. Do we need to start thinking more about environmental services, batteries, things like that? Absolutely. But you took a huge risk at a time when you knew for a fact that we couldn't afford it. We could not afford it. And that's money now that's gone down the drain with no return on our investment. And yet we've got a lot of people suffering. We've never, ever since 1999 cut in positions in the education system. We're doing that now. That's quietly been promoted amongst the healthcare system. Positions that are vacated, you're not replacing. We give you money and then we take it away. So there was a budget where we gave you money and then all of a sudden we said to the healthcare system, now you have to find $1.5 billion. I know we gave it to you, but now you have to give it back. We give money to our university and CEGEP systems last June. They had it for 30 days. And then they said, no, you're not getting it back. I know you might be in the middle of renovating that toilet and that bathroom. You have to stop. You have to give it back to us because we've poorly spent your money. So how does this happen? It's through definitely not well thought out decisions, as well as negotiation with unions. There was a lot of increase in salaries, and rightfully so, for public servants who maybe needed to have that boost. Our nurses, for example, we need to have a lot more nurses. And we need to respect the quality of care that they offer, but we also need to attract and keep that talent. So we need to do things like that. But if we hadn't made a lot of dumb decisions like SACLIC, we're at $500 million and counting in additional unplanned spend. And everybody's saying that I didn't know, but I did know. Now we have the enquête that's underway. Who knows what's going to come with that?
How much is the enquête going to cost?
A lot of money.
Yeah. So
a lot of money.
It's a never-ending quest, we can say. But I'm glad to see that there are people like you that take this to heart, that obviously do it out of passion. I mean,
I'm trying to control
you're great, and that's why it's a pleasure for me to leave you the floor. But definitely, I'd like to do this again because I don't think we're going to cover everything that we need to cover in one segment.
So many things we could talk about.
Jennifer Maccarone, M&A of Westmount St. Louis, thank you for coming to the Broker's Desk. The first official politician, but also the first official human politician on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was a lot of fun.
And so let's do it again. And congratulations for everything that you do.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.